It's in keeping with the Defence Treaty and Defence Pact, and it's quite expected that Australian would have joined in. Not only Australian, even other allies like UK, France, Germany, they have committed their support, uh, though largely to the defensive operation. Even Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, has said that options of participating in such operation which are going on is well on the cards. While as of now they have not really committed, but that option still remains. So the point I'm trying to make is that alliances, defense partnerships are built for such contingencies, and Australia joining the war and actively participating is quite in keeping with the traditional partnership and defense alliances, and this has not come as an unexpected development. It was anticipated, and more would join in time to come, because after all, these partnership and alliances are tested during such circumstances, and they only validate the credibility of such alliances when they are actually executed on the ground in an event of eventuality, which is right now on. That is the war between America and Israel joint against the Iran. So therefore, I think this is very much expected on the cards, and it should not have come as a surprise, Asuma.
Thank you very much. With that, I would like to thank Major General Gigi Vidivedi for always joining us and sharing that insight with us. Thank you. Now we move on to Lebanon and Israel. Israel has launched fresh strikes on Beirut and southern Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah positions in response to escalating violence. The strikes hit several Hezbollah command centers in Beirut's southern suburbs, with no immediate casualties reported. Israel's military has also targeted an apartment in the Bedawi refugee camp, killing senior Hamas official Wassim Atallah al-Ali. Meanwhile, Hezbollah vowed to intensify its attacks on Israel, claiming multiple strikes as far as Tel Aviv. The conflict, which erupted after the killing of Iran's leader, has led to at least 72 deaths and 83,000 displaced people in Lebanon. Now we welcome Mr. Andrew K.P. Long. He's an independent China strategist, joins us live from Hong Kong. Thank you very much, Mr. Long, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at Israel and Lebanon, how do you analyze current capacity of Hezbollah? Do you think that they are willing to, no, not they are willing to, but do you think they are going to be incapacitated because of this operation or final push by Israel attacking them?
Well, Iran has two very powerful proxies which support the cause of Iran and its national sovereignty. Don't forget that before the Lebanon was invaded by Israel and degraded its infrastructure and the Hezbollah regime, but without completely eliminating the Hezbollah movement. So Hezbollah remains Iranian proxy, which would be activated and energized because of this invasion against the entire Iran. The other one, proxy, is the Houthis, who have a very disruptive capabilities over the port of the Strait of Hormuz, and so it would threaten the kind of enemy adversary ships or shipping across the Strait of Hormuz, across the Red Sea. So I think that this is part of Iran's retaliatory strategy, mobilizing its proxies, the Hezbollah and the Houthis, but also hitting out left, right, and center against the entire region. Not that they want to make an enemy of countries like Saudi Arabia or the UAE. After all, only relatively recently, there was a historic rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia, brokered by China. But however, when these very important interests are at stake, the Saudi Arabia obviously is not on all fours with Iran. But Iran's position, the strategy is to diffuse the war around the region. Not to make an enemy of the region, but unfortunately that's collateral damage. But what's the objective? The objective is to cause so much pain to the region, to the rest of the world, so that there is a backlash against continuing this invasion by the United States and Israel. I think that that's a strategy. And then also, they want to wear out the American military because various sources reported that the Americans and the Israelis are fast running out of their expensive weapons, their expensive defense missiles, because a great deal of them have already been expended over the war in Ukraine, and they're not producing them fast enough. But all these realities are hidden by a very gung-ho narrative trumpeted by President Trump. But underneath it all, the Iranians, even though the economy is weakened, even though they have lost the airspace, continue to have massive a number of missiles and drones, which they want to deploy to continue to destabilize the region and mobilizing its proxies like the Houthis and also the Hezbollah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Long, for sharing that insight. Please do stay with us as we come back to you. Now moving on to Asia, Chinese Air Force activity around Taiwan has fallen sharply in recent weeks, with no flights at all in the past week, a sudden drop in what had been daily military maneuvers that could signal Beijing is recalibrating its pressure on Taipei. According to Taiwan government's data, China has dispatched 460 military planes, from fighter jets to drones, into Taiwan's air defense identification zone so far this year, a 46.5% drop compared with a year ago. In February, Taiwan has detected 190 such Chinese aircraft, the lowest monthly tally since its defense ministry began publishing detailed daily figures in 2022 on what Taipei sees as an ongoing pressure campaign by Beijing, which has been honing its ability to attack the island, including with war games. According to experts, Chinese President Xi Jinping may be toning down visible pressure tactics to create a better atmosphere ahead of his anticipated meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump at the end of the month. Now we welcome back Mr. Andrew K.P. Long. He's an independent China strategist. Joins us live from Hong Kong. Thank you very much, Mr. Long, for staying with us. Now, you know, the sudden drop in these maneuvers around Taiwan, do you think it is because of U.S. President and Xi Jinping's meeting, or do you think there could be other reasons for this?
Well, the deterrence of the Chinese military over the Taiwan Strait is part of the three-pronged strategy to push Taiwan towards peaceful unification. The three strategies are firstly, military coercion through these flights and also deployment of naval vessels along Taiwan Strait, demonstrating China's military resolve against any unilateral declaration of independence. The second strand of this three-point strategy is diplomatic and economic isolation. More and more countries are now giving up the recognition of Taiwan, even though the original number recognizing Taiwan as a country has dwindled to just a small handful. The third pronged strategy is increasing people-to-people exchanges. The two countries, the two places across the Taiwan Strait belong to the same people, the same civilization, the same language. And Taiwan have been part of China for millennia, dating back to the Ming Dynasty and beyond. So I think that through these peaceful exchanges, and there are lots of Taiwanese businesses already operating on the mainland, and people-to-people visits on both sides, and academic exchanges as well. So this three-pronged strategy would sustain the momentum, pushing Taiwan towards a negotiation table on a peaceful unification package, which are likely to be even more generous than for Hong Kong and Macau. The latest Trump stance on Taiwan also helps because President Trump has been ambivalent towards whether it's going to put boots on the ground in a direct confrontation with China when push comes to shove. And all these dynamics add together would achieve Beijing's preferred aim of peaceful unification. President Xi did mention 2027, but that was only the 100th anniversary of the founding of the PLA. That year also marked the milestone where President Xi wanted the PLA to be almost invincible in exerting its deterrence over the Taiwan Strait. It's not, not a date for military action. And peaceful unification along the three trends would remain the priority. But the scaling down this kind of flights also, of course, sends a positive signal ahead of the expected visit. Even though such a visit is now facing headwinds with what is Trump doing on Iran, trampling on the world order,
Yes.
especially raising a lot of concerns around the world, and
Yes.
it could be problematic for President Xi to host President Trump in the circumstances. However,
Yes.
the meeting had been agreed and also a welcome a stage of the confrontational relationship to at least pause,
Yes.
so that both sides can find ways to construct a more constructive relationship.
Thank you as always, Mr. Long, for highlighting that insight with us on News 6 World. Now we move on to U.S. U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has faced intense questioning during a House Judiciary Committee hearing over her comments labeling 2 Americans killed by federal immigration officers as domestic terrorists. Noem has made these remarks shortly after the January shootings came under scrutiny. She did not retract or apologize, citing ongoing FBI investigations and the dangerous circumstances faced by federal agents. The hearing also featured debates over immigration enforcement, the use of force by officers, and Noem's claims about deportation priorities. Let's listen in.
Based on what you know today, Madam Secretary, were Renee Good and Alex Preddy domestic terrorists?
Congressman, what happened in Minnesota in those 2 incidents was an absolute tragedy.
Were
And I
they
offer my
domestic terrorists, as
condolences-
you said to the
My
country?
condolences to their families, because I know that their lives will never be the same after that happened.
Is that an apology
I
for what
was-
you said?
We, in those incidents, offer as much information as we can from officers and agents on the ground in a chaotic scene that gets
I'll repeat
relayed
my question,
to
reclaiming
us
my
so that
time.
we can
Based on
communicate
what
with the
you
American
know
people.
today, Madam Secretary, based on what you know today, were Renee Good and Alex Preddy domestic terrorists?
As you know, there's ongoing investigations that are being led by the
Oh,
FBI.
but you didn't wait for the
and there's-
investigation, did you? You didn't wait for the evidence. You proclaimed that they were domestic terrorists at the time. Why did you do that?
And you didn't wait to attack our law enforcement.
Why did you do
officers
that?
who are going into a dangerous situation.
Why did you call them
One thing I
domestic
would say
terrorists?
Is our ICE officers and our HSI officers that day risked their lives to protect that scene, so evidence could be reclaimed, so it could be used.
Now we move on to Asia. China's 14th National People's Congress has opened its 4th session in Beijing with around 3,000 deputies gathering to review the government's work report. The session marks a critical moment as the country sets its development path for the next 5 years. Premier Li Qiang has outlined an economic growth target of 4.5 to 5% for 2026, emphasizing stability and high-quality development. Key policies focus on expanding domestic demand, stabilizing employment, and fostering technological innovation. As China faces global uncertainties, it remains committed to opening up and enhancing international cooperation. Let's have a look.
China has its economic growth target for this year at 4.5 to 5%, placing economic stability and high-quality development at the center of its policy agenda. The target was announced as Chinese Premier Li Qiang delivered the government work report at the opening meeting of the National People's Congress on Thursday morning in Beijing. The report outlines a more proactive macro-policy stance with measures aimed at expanding domestic demand, stabilizing employment, and reinforcing market confidence.
The
main targets for development this year are as follows. GDP growth of 4.5 to 5% while striving for better in practice. Surveyed urban unemployment rate of around 5.5% with over 12 million new urban jobs.
Beyond the growth target, the report places strong emphasis on accelerating technological innovation and industrial upgrading. It calls for fostering new quality productive forces. These would rely on concrete measures to build a modernized industrial system with advanced manufacturing as the backbone and accelerate high-level self-reliance in science and technology.
We will launch industrial innovation projects, encourage central government enterprises and other SOEs to take the lead in making application scenarios more accessible, and foster emerging pillar industries such as integrated circuits, aviation and aerospace, biomedicine, and low-altitude economy.
At a time of growing global uncertainties and shifting supply chains, China reaffirmed its commitment to high-standard opening up. Premier Li stressed expanding institutional opening up, stabilizing foreign trade, attracting foreign investment, and deepening international economic cooperation. It signals continuity in China's approach to globalization while emphasizing resilience and security in development.
We will expand market access and open up more areas, particularly in the service sector. We will shorten the active list for cross-border trade in services. We will advance negotiations to conclude more regional and bilateral trade and investment agreements. We will improve the layout and scale of pilot free trade zones to boost their innovation-driven development capacity. We will take solid steps to develop the Hainan Free Trade Park. We will keep the volume of foreign trade stable and refine its mix.
The numbers and policy signals delivered this morning now move from the podium into group deliberations. As lawmakers review the report in the days ahead, the priorities outlined here will shape China's economic direction for 2026, lay the groundwork for the next 5-year plan period from 2026 to 2030, and signal how the country intends to navigate a complex global environment. Huang Yue, CGTN, in the Great Hall of the People, Beijing.
That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.
The physics was known for quite a while, and so I think it hasn't really changed our understanding the quantum world work.
The job with the James Webb Space Telescope was to look as far back in time as we could to see the universe as it was young.
Changing the basic attitude about what education is for and what it needs to be.
Biology, medical studies, they make great progress.
Hello and welcome, I'm Ruby Barlow and you're watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the headlines of this hour. US President Trump confirms that US forces are in a very strong position as Iran's leadership forces faces rapid losses. Trump rates the US war effort in the ongoing Middle East conflict 15 out of 10, claiming Iran's key missile capabilities are being wiped out. US submarine strike hit an Iranian vessel off Sri Lanka's southern coast, killing at least 80 people thousands of kilometres from the Gulf as fighting paralysed shipping through the Strait of Hormuz for a 5th day, choking off a vital Middle East oil and gas flow. US Senate Republicans backed President Donald Trump's military campaign against Iran on Wednesday, voting to block a bipartisan resolution aiming to require congressional authorization. The Senate voted 53 to 47 not to advance the resolution, largely along party lines. Turkey said that NATO air defences destroyed an Iranian ballistic missile headed into Turkish airspace on Wednesday, marking the first time the alliance member has been drawn into the Middle East conflict and raising the possibility of a major expansion involving its bloc allies. An independent United Nations probe investigating rights violations in Iran condemned attacks by Israel and the United States, as well as Tehran's retaliatory strikes, saying they violated the UN Charter. It also expressed deep shock over the strike on a primary school in southern Iran on Saturday, where more than 160 children were killed. Nepal begins voting on today in a general election that will choose a new parliament in the Himalayan nation, nearly 6 months after a wave of unprecedented youth-led protests and the deaths of 77 people that forced Nepal's then Prime Minister to quit. Investor anxiety calmed after a news report that Iran had signalled openness to talks and a pledge by President Donald Trump to steady oil markets as US stocks closed up on Wednesday. Investors flocked again to tech shares, lifting the Nasdaq by 1.29%. A big tech industry group consisting of major Anthropic backers Amazon and Nvidia on Wednesday expressed concern over the Pentagon's decision to declare the artificial intelligence company a supply chain risk, as other investors raced to contain fallout from the lab's fight with the US Defense Department. The White House has confirmed that President Donald Trump is actively considering a US role in Iran after the conclusion of the American-Israeli operation. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has said that Trump is in discussions with his advisors and national security team regarding any potential post-war involvement. Meanwhile, President Trump is set to attend a dignified transfer ceremony for US troops killed in the ongoing war with Iran. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt stated that Trump intends to stand in grief alongside the families of these fallen heroes, though no date for the ceremony has been set yet. And the White House has also declared that Iran's regime is being absolutely crushed under the leadership of President Donald Trump in the ongoing war. Caroline Leavitt also stated that 47 years of tolerating Iran's status as a state sponsor of terrorism are coming to an end, and Iran's leadership is paying for their actions. Let's in fact listen to what the White House press secretary had to say.
Under the leadership of President Donald J. Trump, the rogue Iranian terrorist regime is being absolutely crushed. 47 years of tolerating and enabling the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism are over. Iran's murderous terrorist leaders are paying for their crimes against America, and they are paying.
Now joining us live, we have retired Major General Sidakaji, who is a senior geopolitical and strategic expert in Jaipur. Good morning to you, Major General Sidakaji. First question to you, and thank you so much for coming on the show today. First question to you, do you think that the United States will learn from their mistakes in the Iraq war, considering their thinking of involvement in Iran after the war finishes?
Good morning, Ruby. Thank you for inviting me for your show, and greetings to your viewers. As far as the question is concerned, with regard to the preamble that you have given, I don't think United States is going in the right direction. They need to introspect, make course correction. Otherwise, maybe the declining status of superpower would be actually speeding up very fast, and they may lose the status of supremacy and authority in the world order. They are only adding on to the geopolitical churn. They're intensifying the complexity. This is not going to actually pave a roadmap for a productive, progressive, and forward-looking, peaceful world order in 21st century. Now, having said this, allow me to dilate with regard to your question. You took the reference of Iraq. Now, this is going to turn out to be worse than Iraq. Iraq was a different ballgame. I do understand they also have Shiite-dominated kind of a regime. It is a smaller state in comparison with Iran. Iran is a bigger civilizational state or nation. And the 47 years of the regime the theocratic regime has to be understood in totality. And also it has to be understood that in order to rout or eliminate terrorism, there is a method in madness. That method in madness is not by knocking off the head of the organization. Whole nation cannot be branded as terrorist. There are far and few people who may be indulged in it. And by knocking off the head, one has actually antagonized the people. There was a difference of opinion. There was a divide amongst the civil population. My take right from the day one or past 5 or 6 days of this conflict is that this external attack by Israel and USA is going to galvanize the nation. It will ignite that the spark of nationalism. People will come together. It is not, you cannot draw parallel of Iraq and Libya. Libya perhaps was the closest one. When the aerial bombing was going on, the civil population had come together. There was a revolution, and that's how they could succeed to an extent. But over here in Iran, it's a different ball game. Maybe Israel and USA would do well to apply themselves and carry out mid-course correction so that it shouldn't happen that they're heading the path of a second Vietnam, wherein they came back bruised and with injuries on the face, with sullen faces from Vietnam. They didn't even know what was the political objective and what was the military objective of going into Vietnam, and lost so many people, killed so many people. And USA as a superpower was virtually kicked out by forces inimical from Vietnam. So therefore it will do them good to carry out analysis, understand Iran properly, never underestimate the enemy with regard to the military capability, as also the political, socio-cultural, economic strength, despite the fact that the economy is in shambles. Back to you, Ruby.
Now, Major General, in the case that we do see a complete wiping out of the Islamic regime, and we have seen deaths of many members of the leadership and bureaucracy of the Islamic regime, in this case we could have a possible vacuum of power if the US does not play an active role in ruling Iran. The US hopes for a people's uprising and has called for the Iranian people to rise up against the Islamic regime. I believe they've been hitting police stations in an effort to reduce some of that domestic political pressure that is on the Iranian people. Iran, of course, also deals with ethnic divisions, as well as you were saying, this impact of theocratic rule for decades. What do you think we could see as a possible power sharing scenario when this war is finished? Could we see a democratic rule for the Iranian people, or will it just turn out to be a moderate version of the Islamic regime that is more agreeable to Trump's demands?
Excellent, brilliant question. I must compliment you for focusing on the central issue. Brilliant question. You see, that's what I have been laying a lot of emphasis on Iran, understanding Iran. Iran is a country with a population of 90 million, around 9 crores. Compare it with Venezuela. Venezuela is just about, I think, 2 crores or something, less than that. Look at the size of Venezuela with Iran. Why am I drawing parallel is that the Maduro and his wife, they could be hijacked in the middle of the night. Over here, hijacking was a tall order, so they went in for a surgical precision targeted strike, I would say. Okay, fine. They took the supreme leader and 49 other people, the topmost leaders. They have also taken the lives of, if I recall correctly, almost close to 170 school children, girl children, along with the teachers. Also a volleyball team comprising of, I think, 10 or 20 of them, they were also knocked off. Now, I'm sure somewhere in the leadership, there is a corner for morality and ethics of warfare. It's fine. I'm not, by no means am I siding with terrorism or anything. So under these circumstances, one has to see, does these kind of activities, external attack or external effort to intervene or put somebody who's pro-democratic in nature, will people of Iran who have adopted Sharia law for past 47 years or been under the theocratic rules and the structure, will they be amenable to accept a change like this? So therefore, what am I trying to highlight? I am highlighting the change transformation. When you talk about change transformation, what it means is it goes through a process of denial, thereafter resistance, thereafter reconciliation, then the adaptation, and finally it takes the shape of acceptance. Now this is going to be a long drawn affair. It is on a spectrum of all these activities. So therefore, is America or Israel, are they prepared for a long haul? I don't think so. They simply want a quick result so that Donald Trump can be awarded Peace Prize, Nobel Peace Prize. Warfare is not about the Nobel Peace Prize. Warfare is a lot of commitment, a lot of sacrifices made by the soldiers. They have a cause. What is the cause of USA to go in for a fight against Iran here without having studied the nitty-gritties of Iran, the capability of Iran? Iran has been pushed to a corner. I'm also a well-wisher of a superpower. I want a superpower. All of us want a superpower. It is something better than nothing. Somebody to guide the world order into some kind of a progressive, forward-looking direction. Unfortunately, that is not so. It has happened off the cuff in a jiffy. They just found that some information came their way, and suddenly there was a contestation between Israel and the USA. USA thought, why should Israel take the credit? Let's go in and hit them first. So in some quarter you find Marco Rubio is saying something, J.D. Vance is saying something, Donald Trump is saying something, Israel is saying something. So news platforms also, they are reporting in a different way. At places you find America has hit them, at places you find Israel has hit them. So that apart, what I am coming to is that coming to the centrality of your question, power sharing, I think it's a big question. It's a very tall order. Nobody in Iran will ever accept anybody coming from outside. Whoever is the regime head now, they have threatened to kill him. They have threatened to neutralize him. They say anyone who comes as a supreme leader is going to be assassinated. Well, is that the way the new world order has to evolve? I don't know. I'm a well-wisher of a positive, progressive and peaceful world order. All these mindless conflicts must come to an end. Second question you have asked is that will Iran ever show some signature of changing its attitude? Yes, you did not use the word of attitude, but I am saying that factor of attitude is actually evolving. 79% people live in urban areas. 27% people live in rural areas. So the people who are in urban areas, they don't have employment opportunities. Price rise is actually hitting them hard. Yet there is a change of attitude, gradual change of attitude. This has to be calibrated. In case somebody wants that democracy must come back to Iran, then it has to be built in a gradual, nurtured in a gradual, systematic, incremental manner, not the way it has been done. Back to you.
Exactly. Major General, please stay with us as we move to our next update in these developments. Israel's Defense Minister, Israel Katz, has confirmed that the country had initially planned to strike Iran in mid-2026. However, shifting developments within Iran and regional dynamics led to the operation being moved up to February. The Israeli army reported a successful strike on a major Iranian military compound in Tehran, marking a significant escalation in the ongoing conflict. Listen in to what the Israeli Defense Minister, Israel Katz.
מאחר ותוכנן מבצע לאמצע השנה, עם אותו יעד, אותו יעד שנקבע, אבל עקב ההתפתחויות והנסיבות, בעיקר מה שקרה בתוך איראן, ועמדת נשיא ארצות הברית, וכל האפשרות לייצר כאן מבצע משולב, אז בא הצורך להקדים את הכל לחודש פברואר.
Now, joining us again, we have retired Major General Sudhakaji, who is a senior geopolitical and strategic expert in Jaipur. Now, just quickly, Major General, why would the strike have been initially planned for mid-2026 and moved up to now? Surely it would have been surely it would have been better to wait until these negotiations finished, or were they started in bad faith?
You see, what comes to my mind is that the elections in Israel is around the corner in the month of October. When you plan for a strike like this by mid of 2026, it takes the timeline closer to the elections. In Israel, I'm talking of. That is what Netanyahu is planning and trying for. Carry forward the conflict to such a level of timeline that it has got minimum gap with the elections in Israel. That is one. Secondly, the midterm elections in USA are in the month of November. So it takes the conflict spectrum closer to the timeline of changeover of the leadership, both in Israel as also, not in case of USA, it is not change of leadership, it would be a swapping of the dominance of the Democrats over the Republicans. So now, and within this time, they would have had enough time to consolidate and also show tangible and substantive progress. Now, unfortunately, in the race for, claiming the recognition, somehow they have goofed it up so badly that neither of the two is able to take the credit. The whole world is getting after them. Iran is in any case getting after them. So that is all comes to my mind. Another thing that I wish to share is that instead of mid, it has come to the first week or the early part of 2026. You see, now what is happening all over the world, things are actually getting militarized. People are getting prepared for the worst eventuality. Iran would be getting more time to prepare and consolidate itself. That would actually make Iran become stronger. Because in the first week of January, there was a special meeting given to Donald Trump. A presentation was given that Iran is not posing any threat against USA. He was more or less convinced. Thereafter, the Jewish lobby have got after him. They put weight on Congress and also driven him along or going for the strike. And certainly the strike information came from the Mossad and the CIA, and it was a golden rare opportunity. They have been hunting or looking for it. They said there is no better opportunity than this. So therefore they have gone in for it with an aim. Without any aim, they have not thought through the consequences. This is, unfortunately, I must bring out this thing. They should have thought about the inventory. They should have thought through about the military capability, about the Strait of Hormuz being closed, the way it has been closed, the impact it will have on the oil market and the entire economy. The whole world is actually, trembling with fear. There are showing signs of, collapse at most of the places. I only hope and pray that we don't get into a situation of 2008 Lehman Brothers crisis in a situation like this. You have everything getting affected. Oil, commodities, your fuel, food, fertilizer, the way of life of common man is going to be impacted. That is the big issue. That is why perhaps because of all these reasons, they came impromptu, got a target, hit it without realizing what actually lies ahead of it, or the consequences of this was not analyzed properly by the Americans and the advisor. Back to you, Ruby.
Major General Sadakaji, thank you so much this morning for coming on our show. It's been a pleasure to have you on as always. Now to the United States, Republican US Senator Steve Daines from Montana has announced that he will not seek re-election in November's midterm elections. Just minutes before the filing deadline, Daines confirmed his decision, stating that he believes it's time for new leadership, such as Tim Sheehy, to take the reins. Daines, who had been wrestling with this decision for months, made the announcement in a written statement and a video posted on social media. This comes on the same day Seth Bodnar, former president of the University of Montana, launched an independent campaign for Daines' seat. Montana Democrats, who have struggled in recent years, remain sidelined with no prominent candidates stepping forward for the Senate race. Daines, who was a former business executive and close ally of US President Trump, is leaving behind a Republican-controlled Senate where his party holds a slim majority. Now we are joined live by Matthew Vadum, who is an author and journalist located in Washington. Good morning, Matthew. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now, of course, Montana, a very politically interesting state. It has an interesting mix of rural population and urbanized population, with a lot of people moving into the urban centers in the last couple of years. what could a independent candidate winning the Senate seat in Montana mean for US politics?
I think it would send shockwaves, but I don't think it will happen. I think that the seat is probably going to stay, barring unforeseen circumstances, Senator Daines' seat is going to stay in Republican hands. Montana has been has been trending Republican increasingly in recent years, although, many years ago, like around World War I and whatever, it did have it did flirt with progressivism. There was a great suffragette leader from Montana, a congresswoman named Jeanette Rankin, and they have had times when they have had Democrats representing Montana in the U.S. Senate. But I'm pretty sure Montana, barring unforeseen circumstances, is going to stay in Republican hands after the November midterm elections. Why Daines waited so long to call off his re-election bid is not really entirely clear at this point. Often when politicians say they want to retire to spend more time with their family, it's just a cover story for bad polling numbers. But I don't know that Daines was facing bad polling numbers in this case. Maybe he just got tired. Maybe he just got tired of being a senator. It's a very demanding, stressful job.
Okay. And just in terms of the impact of the Iran war on these upcoming midterms, do you think it will work in favour for the Democrats as the American public deals with this new war, or will it bring together the Republican base and turnout for the midterms?
I think it will do both. I think it will energize the Republican base. It will also energize the Democratic Party's base. The question is, who gets more energized and who comes out in greater numbers? The problem for Republicans is that when President Trump is not on the ballot, they tend not to do as well. So, it seems to be a foregone conclusion that Republicans are going to lose control of Congress in November no matter what. I don't think it is a foregone conclusion. Right now it looks like they are going to lose control of the House of Representatives, where they only have a majority of like 1 or 2 seats at the moment. But the Senate, because of the way it's constructed, the fact that only 1/3 of all senators are up for re-election at any given time, in the elections every 2 years, suggests that the Republicans who currently have an advantage of 53-47 in the 100-seat Senate are probably still going to control the Senate after November. Now, this could change if President Trump's approval numbers collapse and people people turn against him. And it's far from clear that that's going to happen. The war in Iran polled very badly. Remember, this is only a week or not even that old at this point. In the first 1 or 2 days, it polled very badly. There was a poll that said only like a quarter of the American people supported it, but now there's been a poll that came out today or yesterday saying it's more like 50-50 in favor and 50% opposed. If the war does not go well, if the United States and Israel do not accomplish tangible results that satisfy the American people, there's going to be a problem. If a lot of American military personnel start dying and coming home in body bags, that is the thing that the American electorate dislikes the most, and you could see them turn against President Trump. However, as long as they remain convinced that this is a worthwhile exercise, and in my opinion it is, to get rid of the world's greatest state sponsor of terrorism that has been at war with the United States for the last 47 years, it's worthwhile. But that doesn't, just because I'm in favor of it, doesn't mean the American people will be. And if they don't see tangible results, and if they start seeing caskets, coffins taken off of military carriers, they're going to be upset.
Matthew, please stay with us as we move to our next update. According to reports, the Strait of Hormuz, a key oil export route, has gained renewed attention after a US-Israeli attack on Iran. The strait, connecting the Gulf with the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea, is critical for global oil transport, with about a fifth of the world's oil passing through it daily. Reports suggest that following the recent Iranian retaliation on oil, prices rose as Tehran attacked ships and energy facilities, halting exports. Iran's Revolutionary Guards have claimed full control of the strait, warning vessels to avoid transit and reporting attacks on 10 tankers. Joining us again, we have Matthew Vadum, who is an author and journalist located in Washington, D.C. Matthew, of course, another attempt by the Trump administration here to manage discontent with this Iranian war. We've seen oil prices and gas prices increase drastically since this war has started. What could a US plan to
Hello and welcome. I'm Sima Katauka and you're watching The World Report on News X World. Let's take a look at some of the headlines of this hour. US President Donald Trump has confirmed that US forces are in a very strong position as Iran's leadership suffers rapid losses. Trump rates the US war effort in the ongoing Middle East conflict 15 out of 10, claiming Iran's key missile capabilities are being wiped out. US submarine strike hit an Iranian vessel off of Sri Lanka's southern coast, killing at least 80 people, thousands of kilometers from the Gulf, as fighting paralyzed shipping through the Strait of Hormuz for a fifth day, choking off vital Middle East oil and gas flows. US Senate Republicans have backed President Donald Trump's military campaign against Iran on Wednesday, voting to block a bipartisan resolution aiming to require congressional authorization. The Senate voted 53 to 47 not to advance the resolution, largely along party lines. Turkey has said that NATO air defenses destroyed an Iranian ballistic missile headed into Turkish airspace on Wednesday, marking the first time the alliance member has been drawn into the Middle East conflict and raising the possibility of a major expansion involving its bloc allies. An independent United Nations probe investigating rights violations in Iran has condemned attacks by Israel and the United States, as well as Tehran's retaliatory strikes, saying that they violated the UN Charter. It also expressed deep shock over the strike on a primary school in southern Iran on Saturday, where more than 160 children were killed. Nepal begins voting today in a general election that will choose a new parliament in the Malayan nation. Nearly 6 months after a wave of unprecedented youth-led protests and the deaths of 77 people that forced Nepal's then Prime Minister to quit. Investor anxiety has calmed after a news report that Iran had signaled openness to talks and a pledge by President Donald Trump to steady oil markets. As U.S. stocks closed up on Wednesday, investors flocked again to tech shares, lifting the Nasdaq by 1.29%. A big tech industry group consisting of major Anthropic backers, Amazon and Nvidia, on Wednesday has expressed concerns over the Pentagon's decision to declare the artificial intelligence company a supply chain risk, as other investors could race to contain fallout from the lab's fight with the U.S. Defense Department. Now we start this hour with Israel. Explosions rocked Doha and Myanmar as Gulf countries face a new wave of Iranian drone and missile attacks. These attacks come as a retaliation against the US-Israeli airstrikes against Iran. The region remains on edge, with air defenses activated and civilian infrastructures damaged. Meanwhile, the Spanish foreign minister has pushed back against reports that Spain has changed its position on allowing US military use of its bases in the region. Jose Manuel Alvarez has insisted that there has been no shift in Spanish policy regarding the war or US base use. Iran, however, has expressed gratitude towards Spain, praising the country for what it calls its responsible conduct in the opposing war. Now we welcome Mr. Peter Baum. He's an editor at Weekly Blitz, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Mr. Baum, for joining us. Yes, I can hear you. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Baum, now how do you analyze, European countries or Australia and UK letting the support or supporting these allies like US and Israel to use their bases or to send more troops for them? And do you think that it can lead to a more sensitive relationship between those countries and the current countries that are being attacked by Iran in the GCC region?
Okay, so we're now 5 days into this conflict, and it must be said that at the very beginning of the conflict, there were various European nations that were, including the United Kingdom, that were not fully on side with the Trump administration. They were very lukewarm in offering full support right at the outset, and that was clearly disheartening to the Americans. Trump put it in very strong language. Now we're at the stage where there is, to my knowledge, only one European nation that has come out categorically against the Trump and the rest of Europe, and that's Spain, who are governed by I would say, a rabidly left-wing, virtually communist globalist in the form of Sanchez, and he is definitely isolated on the let's say the Western stage, so much so that Iran are actually thanking Spain for their position in this conflict. Ireland, whose military abilities don't matter anyway, but politically, as you know, they're part of the EU, have also been very lukewarm. But all the other allies now, including, I guess, a reluctant Australia, perhaps even a reluctant Canada, are now supporting what seem to be supporting politically what Trump is doing. Even France is now offering military support, so is the United Kingdom. So I don't think there's any fracture amongst Western allies apart from Spain, who I think economically will pay the price when this conflict is finished.
And building on that, so Mr. Baum, how do you think, Arab countries which thought that their relationship with West is warming up is seeing this cooperation, because they also need help, they also need aid, they also need defenses. For now, I think they're only solely dependent on themselves for their defense.
Okay, the Arab world, I would say the Muslim Arab world,
yes.
I think has been quite shocked about what Iran has done. Now, clearly, Israel and America, as we saw in the war in June, have allies in Jordan, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia. Jordan and Saudi letting the US and Israel use their airspace, which I'm sure they've done this time round. What has shocked those Arab nations that were more would facilitate Iran, such as Oman, Qatar, to some extent Bahrain and Kuwait, have been absolutely shocked by the behavior of the Iranians in attacking them. Now, there is a method to the Iranian madness, which unfortunately has not paid off. Their method was that if they could create havoc amongst the oil markets, which they have done short term, then the American public would, seeing gas and energy price rises, which they have done, the Iranians considered that this would bring the conflict to a very short end. But in fact, it hasn't, and it won't, because the impact has been, what should we say, negative for the oil markets, of course, but the price of gasoline and oil in the States was quite low anyway. So I think the Americans economically will be able to wear this. We'll see energy prices go up in Europe, and if they continue to go up, then the conflict is becoming increasingly unpopular. But for the moment, I think the Americans and the Israelis will be able to bring this war to a fairly swift conclusion, and I don't think the economic impact will be as devastating on the world markets as the Iranians had hoped for when they started attacking the United Arab Emirates and the Gulf and the energy-producing nations in the Gulf.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baum, for sharing that. Please do stay with us as we stay on the region. Now, according to reports, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps claims to have struck an American oil tanker in the northern Persian Gulf after the sinking of the Iranian warship Iris Dana in the Indian Ocean. The incident, which has not been independently verified, has left the U.S. ship on fire. The IRGC reports that the attack took place early Thursday and that they now have full control over the Strait of Hormuz, a crucial oil and gas transit route between the Gulf and the Indian Ocean. A formal response from the U.S. government is still awaited. Now we welcome back Mr. Baum. Thank you very much, Mr. Baum, for staying with us. Mr. Baum, now that we are seeing Iran retaliate as well, although this particular attack hasn't been independently verified, how do you think, did Iran underestimate US or the regime's attacks towards itself, or the capacity, or do you think it's the opposite? US underestimated Iran's capacity?
No, not at all. I think the intelligence gleaned by both the US and Israel prior to the war starting last weekend was well known. They absolutely studied and realized the amount of firepower that the Iranians had. What I think has shocked Iran is how devastating and how targeted the attacks have been. And we can see that actually in statistics. But before I mention that, let's go back to the oil tanker incident that you were referring to. As much as I've tried in the last half an hour, I can find no absolute verification that the Iranians successfully attacked an American oil tanker. That's not to say they haven't. I just can't prove to your viewers and listeners that that's happened. If they have done, that wouldn't be surprising, and they would consider that a success. But where they have absolutely failed, and this we can see in the, as I said, in the statistics, the number of drone attacks, the number of ballistic missile attacks, the number of short-range missile attacks originating from Iran since Saturday has been on a sliding scale. Now, they may have some, they may be holding back, but I think they would have used their main weaponry to attack Israel at the beginning of the war, and they haven't done. And considering how devastating the Israelis and the Americans have been in their targeting of weapons depots, of rocket launchers in Iran, I would think that the Iranians severely underestimated the challenge and the firepower heaped upon them from both the US and Israel. The reverse of that is, I don't think the Americans or Israelis underestimated the potential of Iran's firepower, but they've done everything they can to dilute that power, and that seems to have been a success. One thing, just to prove my point, as a couple of hours ago, I received updated text messages from an Israeli government department, and Israel have actually now opened up their air skies for domestic travel. So El Al and 3 other domestic Israeli airlines are flying 2 flights an hour apparently, and that will increase as the day goes on, providing there are no more air raid signs, and that gives you a very good clue as to how unsuccessful the Iranians have been in stopping what I would call normal life in Israel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baum, for sharing that. Please do stay with us as we come back to you. Now, moving on to Israel. Israeli strikes have killed 6 people in 2 southern Lebanese villages, including a mayor and his wife. The attacks were part of Israel's ongoing operations against Hezbollah following the group's retaliation for the killing of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Israeli forces have targeted Hezbollah positions in Beirut, while a drone strike in northern Lebanon have killed a senior Hamas official. Tensions have escalated as Hezbollah has vowed to intensify attacks on Israel, claiming responsibility for multiple strikes, including one near Tel Aviv. Now we welcome back Mr. Baum from London. Thank you very much, Mr. Baum, for staying with us. Mr. Baum, as you know, we were just talking about how the strategy is based on and how Iran is being shocked by how precisely targeted the attacks have been from Israel and US. What about the proxies? Do you think that the proxies will be pushed now, like Hezbollah, will be pushed to further to the point of incapacitating their operations in Lebanon and also other proxies? Do you think this will be taken as a chance for Israel to just get this over with? Yes.
Excellent question. So let's talk about the proxies: Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, and the Iraqi Shia militias. Hamas have not engaged at all during this war, and that I guess was expected given the losses they've suffered in the conflict in Gaza. So nothing from Hamas. The Iraqi militias seem to have been contained by covert operations within Iraq itself, and I think the Americans have allies in the Kurdish community, which I think have been containing the Iraqi Shia militias, so nothing from them. As yet, we've seen nothing from the Houthis. Now, that's not to say that they wouldn't engage, but it's surprising that 5 days into the conflict, there has been nothing from the Houthis. They haven't engaged in any missiles into the Gulf of Hormuz, and you would expect that. So why they're not doing that? It could be that they've been that the weaponry has been weakened to the point where they have not much to offer, or that Iran have used the Houthi weaponry for their own aims. So we're left with Hezbollah. Now, prior to Saturday's attack, Israel and the United States, Israel had been engaging in fairly regular attacks on Hezbollah weapons depots, Hezbollah senior commanders, and arms smugglers. So up until Saturday, Hezbollah's attempts to strengthen itself, to rearm itself to any great deal, were severely weakened. They have shown in the last few days that they are able to fire missiles into Israel, but not to the point where the Israelis feel it's necessary to move their northern population from the area where Hezbollah would attack, as they did in the early days of the Gaza war. So I think Israel's point of view is that they will be able to weaken Hezbollah further, contain them, and what's been pleasing from Israel's point of view is how the Lebanese government have come on side and have suggested that they will arrest any Hezbollah operatives who and Hezbollah commanders who are engaging in bringing Lebanon into war with Israel. So Hezbollah, to answer your question, of all the proxies, Hezbollah seems to be the one that is engaging in conflict, but the Israelis at this point feel that they will easily contain them, if not defeat them totally.
With that, I'd like to thank Mr. Baum for joining us today and sharing that insight with us throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Africa. Islamist groups have killed 14 Nigerian soldiers and injured several others during 2 separate attacks on army bases in northeastern Borno State. According to reports, suspected Islamic State West Africa province fighters have attacked the Nigerian Army's base in Nugoshe town, Groza district, killing at least 9 troops and a local person. The attackers, who forced the troops to retreat from their base, has seized guns and ammunition before abducting an unknown number of women. Meanwhile, at the same time, groups also attacked another military base in Pulka, further north in Groza district, killing 5 soldiers, including a commanding officer. Nigerian authorities have reported that the injured troops were taken to Maiduguri city, the Borno state capital, for medical treatment. Now we welcome Mr. Ayanugao Lukbenga Paul. He's a public affairs analyst, joins us live from Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you very much, Mr. Paul, for joining us again. Good to see you.
Thank you, Asuma, for having me.
Thank you. Now, what more can you tell us about this ongoing situation? Are there any new investigations that have come out from the investigations?
No, the military has been a bit tight-lipped on giving very clear information as to the number of victims, and a lot of details of the incident have been shrouded in hush-hush. It's only report from unauthorized sources who are mostly speaking on condition of anonymity that we are relying upon for many of the information that we are getting out of that location at the moment. But one thing that is clear is that all this escalation in attacks on the military posts and checkpoints and facilities in recent time is, one, not unconnected with the upcoming general election that preparation are in top gear for. A lot of political power brokers use insurgency as bargaining chips in election. Their method is so conspicuously clear now that, I mean, if you check the trail over the last 15 years, anytime election is close by, you will be able to detect this. Don't forget that I think last week or recently, another attack of this kind led to the killing of a major in the military. I think Major Meriga some few weeks back. And the other thing is that there are internal saboteurs within the military who are, I believe, aiding and abetting. So military needs to do its soul searching, because a ragtag group of militias cannot just come, I don't want to know their number, and then overwhelm a military barrack, you know, that has at least a battalion there, and then overwhelm it so much that they are able to cut away military equipment, ammunitions, burn down vehicles, and operate for hours, and then you can't have you know, air support to come to their rescue quickly from bases that are nearby. That means there are internal saboteurs in the military itself. And then the third point is that the Nigerian government itself seems to be playing with kids' glove, you know, when handling this matter of insurgency, because just recently our national security advisor made a statement about how terrorists are repenting and they want to be integrated back into the society. I don't think any terrorist who claims to repent should be integrated back to the society. They should either go to jail or be sent to their maker. That is just the simple solution, because every time that we've reintegrated these terrorists back into the society, we have seen that they are the ones who serve as spies, as informants for there are other gang members who are still active on the field. So, and if we have seen that situation several times before, I don't know why our National Security Advisor, Malam Nuhu Ribadu, will be making such careless statements that maybe consideration should be made for terrorists who want to repent, and be integrated back into society. So it shows that the government itself seems not to be too serious in, handling the situation properly, like it should be handled, because once the government shows that it is either death or prison, no other alternative, then those who want to join will think twice before they are joining, and those who are currently there will look for other safe havens, not in the country, to go and repent and live quietly.
And Mr. Paul, if the government seems like this kind of attitude towards this situation, is African Union being considered, or are they saying something towards this situation?
There is nothing African Union can do in this situation. There is nothing ECOWAS can. It's an internal crisis, and if the major player, the people who the issue affects directly, are not ready to tackle it, the outsiders cannot tackle your problem for you, especially when you don't want it tackled, or when you are acting in such a way that gives the outsiders the vibe that you don't want it tackled. So, and the body language that I believe our own system is giving is that, it is what it is, we just leave it be. If the government has been serious about tackling the situation, first and foremost, they will relax their gun law and allow normal citizens, legitimate citizens who want to defend themselves, be able to defend themselves, knowing fully well. I mean, you can imagine that when they attacked Ngoshe, for example, the citizens also have proper gun. Even if it is just pump action, they have proper gun to be able to defend themselves. You can imagine the level of support they will give to the army in driving back many of this territory. And apart from that, many of the times when you hear that terrorists attack a place and operates for hours before army arrives, it will not happen, because people will be able to defend themselves pending when help will arrive, either from police or from the army or from whatever sources help is coming from. So for me, I don't think the government is serious, because there are lots of roadblocks for the government. There is the issue of religion, there is the issue of ethnicity and tribe, that if for example, the president currently is a Yoruba man from the southwestern part of the country. If he tries too hard and shows too much effort, rather than applaud him for doing the right thing, people from the north will come up and say that he is killing their brothers, and that, I mean, we even with the little he is doing, we see everyday comments from several northern forums, castigating him, telling him that he is doing too much and he is killing their brother, rather than speaking to the fact that he is trying to end insurgency.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Mr. Paul, for sharing that deep insight with us on this news. Now we have a breaking news coming in from Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan's foreign ministry says drone attacks were launched from the territory of Iran, targeting the Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic, striking near Nakhchivanian side of Azerbaijan, in its international airport and a nearby village. While Azerbaijan has condemned the strikes as violation of international norms and summoned Iran's ambassador to protest, Azeri capital city Baku has said that it deserves the right to take appropriate retaliatory measures in response to this incident. Now, according to reports, 2 civilians were reported injured and an infrastructure was damaged in the attacks, adding to further rising of the tensions in the region. Now we move on to U.S. The U.S. Justice Department has urged a federal judge to dismiss the American Bar Association's lawsuit, which seeks to block President Trump's efforts to target law firms over their ties to political opponents. The administration argues that the ABA tax standing to sue and that any threats to its members are speculative. However, Judge Amir Ali has expressed skepticism, citing public statements and executive orders issued by the White House. Yaba's lawsuit stems from Trump's executive orders against several major firms, accusing them of bias and using the legal system to target him and his allies. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.
The physics was known for quite a while, and so that I think it hasn't really changed our understanding the quantum world work.
Job with the James Webb Space Telescope was to look as far back in time as we could to see the universe as it was young.
Changing the basic attitude about what education is for and what it needs to be.
Biology, medical studies, they make great progress.
Hello and welcome. You are watching Trending Tech on NewsX World, where we bring you the latest tech breakthroughs and trends from around the globe. Artificial intelligence is no longer just a tech buzzword. It's reshaping the world around us every single day. From the way we shop online to how hospitals diagnose diseases, AI and machine learning are quietly running behind the scenes. Most of us interact with it without even realizing. Recommendation systems, voice assistants, fraud detection, and smart traffic management are just a few examples. Across industries like healthcare, finance, and logistics, AI is helping companies make faster, smarter decisions and boost efficiency. In classrooms, it's changing how students learn and how teachers teach, while businesses face both the challenge and opportunity of job transformation. AI could redefine daily life in ways we haven't fully imagined yet. Today, we take a closer look at where AI is making the biggest impact. To discuss all this and more, joining us now is Mehdi Samayegans. He is a lecturer at Taylor's University, the School of Computer Science. He holds a PhD in artificial intelligence. Thank you very much for joining us, Mehdi. It's a pleasure to have you here on the program. Let's get straight into this conversation. Artificial intelligence is everywhere in headlines, but in practical terms, where are we seeing AI and machine learning making the biggest real-world impact today?
First of all, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk about artificial intelligence. It's a topic that is shaping our world faster than ever before. So regarding to your question, artificial intelligence is already part of our daily lives, even if people don't always notice it. Today, the biggest real-world impact of AI is happening actually in three main areas, like healthcare, finance, and intelligence system behind the digital platforms. For example, in healthcare, AI help doctors detect diseases earlier and more accuracy. For example, AI can analyze the medical images like X-ray or a heart scan and identify patterns that are difficult for the human eye to see. In finance, also AI used for fraud detection and also, for example, risk analysis. Every time you make a digital payment, machine learning systems are working in the background to check if the transaction looks suspicious. So this increases the security and also protects millions of users. And also in everyday digital platform like recommendation systems, In Netflix, for example, AI decide what video you see, what product are suggested to you, and even which news appears in your feed. So these systems learn from users' behavior actually and continuously improve. So the real impact of AI is not just in headline, it's already quietly improving decision making, efficiency and accuracy across industry. So we are not talking about the future, we are talking about the present.
Many people interact with AI daily without realizing it in 2026. From recommendation systems to voice assistants, which everyday AI applications do you think people most underestimate?
I believe the most underestimated AI applications are the ones people use every single day without thinking about them. First is the recommendation systems. When you, for example, open Netflix, YouTube, or even online shopping application, the content you see is not random. AI studies your behavior, what you click, what you watch, and how long you stay, and then predicts what you might like next. Many people think it's just a simple filter, but in the reality, it is the advanced machine learning working in real time. And navigation applications like, for example, Google Map, people think it just shows directions, but AI is constantly analyzing live traffic data and also driver behavior and road conditions to calculate the faster route. So that requires continuous prediction and optimization. The goal of machine learning is the prediction and optimization. For example, spam filters in email, most people never think about them, but AI is silently protecting us every day by detecting suspicious pattern and blocking harmful message before we even see them. And finally, for example, voice assistants. When you speak to your phone, AI converts speech to text and understands your intention and generates a meaningful response within a second. So that process is very complex, but it feels simple to the user. And the most powerful AI systems are often invisible. When technology works so smoothly that people don't notice it, that is when it is truly successful.
Across sectors like healthcare, finance, and logistics, how is machine learning transforming decision making and efficiency on the ground, not just in theory?
Yeah, that's a very great question because many people still think of AI so as a something theoretical or but in reality, machine learning is already transforming the decision making in real world industries. For example, let's talk healthcare as an example. Hospitals now use AI to predict patients' risk, like the chance of heart attack or infection. So these systems learn from thousands of past cases and give doctors real-time support in making better and faster decisions. So it's not just theory, it's saving lives today. In finance, also machine learning helps banks detect fraud in a second. And it also supports smarter investment decision by analyzing massive amounts of market data much faster than any human team could do. And in logistic and supply chain, AI also predicts demand and tracks delivery times and even plans roads for delivery trucks to avoid traffic and reduce fuel costs. So this led to faster deliveries and lower costs, especially for global companies. What is exciting is that these AI systems are not replacing people. They are helping humans make better decisions based on more data and also better prediction. That's where the true power of AI lies, not in replacing us, but in supporting us. But to be honest, AI will take some of the jobs, but the goal is helping human make better decisions.
As a lecturer in computer science, how are you seeing AI tools reshape the classroom, both in how students learn and how educators teach?
Yeah, as a lecturer in computer science, I can clearly see that AI is reshaping the classroom in two major ways: how students learn and how educators teach. First, from the student side, AI tools give students instant feedback. If they are learning programming, for example, AI can help them debug the code and explain errors and suggest improvement in real time. So this makes learning more interactive and personalized. Students no longer have to wait days for feedback. They can learn faster and correct mistakes immediately. AI also support different learning speed. So students need more examples, others want deeper challenges. An AI system can adapt to these needs, which make education more flexible. And also from the educators side, AI help us design better materials and analyze students' performance. We can quickly identify which topic students struggle and with and adjust our teaching strategy. It also reduce repetitive tasks like grading simple quizzes, so we can focus more on mentoring and critical thinking. But there is also responsibility. We must teach students how to use AI ethically. It's very important. Not just copy answers, but I understand the concepts. So overall, AI is not mm, replacing the teachers. It's becoming a powerful assistant in the classroom and making learning smarter, faster, and more personalized.
And there's a growing debate about AI replacing jobs. From your perspective, are we seeing more job displacement or job transformation? And which industries should be preparing the fastest?
That is a very interesting question and also a very important one. I believe AI will replace some jobs. We should be honest about that. Automation has always replaced certain types of work throughout the history, and AI is very powerful form of automation. But I don't think the full story is job disappearance. I think it's mainly job transformation. The key difference will be this. For example, people who learn how to work with AI, especially those who know how to ask the right questions and use AI tools effectively. So we keep their value in the job market. So those who ignore it may struggle. For example, recently I saw a video of a truck driver in Turkey who went to sleep at night while his autonomous truck drove the entire road. And in the morning, he woke up very happy. But honestly, if I were in his position, I would not feel comfortable because if the truck can drive by itself at night, then in the future, it may not need the driver at all. So yes, some jobs, especially repetitive and predictable ones, are at high risk. But at the same time, AI is creating entirely new jobs that didn't exist 10 years ago. AI engineers, prompt engineers, data scientists, AI ethics, AI trainers. So this pattern has happened before during the industrial revolution and also the digital revolution. So industries that should prepare fastest are transportation and manufacturing, customer service, and even parts of the media and finance, because automation is moving very quickly there. In the end, AI will not simply remove jobs. It will change the definition of many jobs. So the real competition will not between humans and AI. It will between humans who use AI and humans who don't. This is my idea.
And what developments in machine learning, such as generative AI, reinforcement learning, or edge AI, do you believe will have the greatest real-world impact over the next 5 or so years?
That for us is very important and strategic questions. Over the next 5 years, I believe 3 areas will have the greatest real-world impact, like generative AI, reinforcement learning, and edge AI, but in different ways. First, generative AI will continue to transform knowledge work. It is already helping with writing, coding, design, customer support, and content creation. In the near future, it will become more specialized in supporting doctors, lawyers, engineers, and also researchers with high-level tasks. So its biggest impact will be in productivity and creativity. Reinforcement learning also will quietly power intelligent decision system. It is especially important in robotics, autonomous vehicles, energy optimization, and also smart infrastructure. Reinforcement learning allows actually machines to learn by interacting with environments and improving those experience. So in complex dynamic systems like traffic control or power grids, this will be extremely valuable. And edge AI may become one of the most transformative developments. Instead of sending all data to the cloud, AI models will run directly on device, like smartphone cameras, medical equipment, drones, something like this. So this means faster decisions and lower latency and better privacy and more reliability. For industries like healthcare, manufacturing, and transportation, this is very important and critical. If I had to choose one area with the broadest impact, I would say generative AI will change how people work, while edge AI and reinforcement learning will change how systems operate. So the next 5 years will not just be about smarter models, they will be about smarter integration of AI into everyday lives and also infrastructure.
And now looking ahead, what's the next big breakthrough in artificial intelligence that the public isn't talking about yet, but should be?
That also is a really good question. I think the next big breakthrough in AI, which the public is not talking about enough, is AI systems that can reason and plan and collaborate more like humans, not just generate content. Right now, most people focus on chatbots and image generation, but the next stage is AI that can break down complex problems into steps and evaluate different strategies and make long-term decisions. For example, imagine AI system that can manage an entire energy grid efficiently and coordinate disaster response in real world, or assist scientific research by designing and testing hypotheses. So these systems will not just answer questions, they will think through process. It's very important. And another major breakthrough will be trustworthy and explainable AI. As AI becomes more powerful, society will demand systems that are transparent, fair, and also accountable. So building AI that can explain why it made a decision, especially, for example, in healthcare or finance, will be critical. So the real breakthrough will not just be more powerful AI, it will be more reliable, more responsible, and more capable of structured reasoning. It's very important. So that is where the future impact will truly expand, not only in technology, but in society as a whole.
Stay tuned on NewsX World.
In the midst of death, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
Japan and South Korea raised defense concerns. Will US military assets shift its focus to Iran? China's growing influence worries Asian allies. Trump's Middle East focus strains Pacific defense. Asian allies fear weakened US deterrence. Hello, I'm Ruby Barlow and you are watching another episode of Explained with me. The recent US and Israeli military strikes on Iran have triggered a wave of concern among America's allies in Asia. On the 2nd of March this week, Japanese lawmakers convened to discuss the potential ramifications of the Iran conflict, particularly its impact on the Asia-Pacific region's defense against China. The question being raised in Tokyo is a pressing one. If the United States continues to engage in the Middle East, what will happen to the defense resources, such as naval ships and missiles, that are crucial in deterring China? As the US military commits forces to the Middle East, there is growing anxiety in Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. These countries rely on US military presence to counter China's growing military power and to maintain stability in the region. Taiwan in particular has voiced its concerns. Lawmakers in the island nation are worried that a prolonged conflict in the Middle East could allow Beijing to step up its pressure on Taiwan. As one Taiwanese official put it, the country must prepare for potential coercion from China while the US is distracted. Taiwan's status remains a sensitive issue for Beijing, and any perceived weakness in US commitment to the region could embolden China's ambitions. Moreover, Japan has already faced delays in deliveries of missiles ordered from the United States, signaling significant supply pressures within the wider defense industrial base. This situation highlights a larger issue for the United States and its allies, specifically in Asia. They worry just how stretched can US military resources become in the region. Japan's concerns are compounded by the fact that 40% of the US Navy's operational ships are currently deployed in the Middle East. This includes vital assets like the Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier and several missile destroyers. At the same time, the US Navy's only carrier deployed in Asia, the George Washington, is undergoing maintenance in Japan. As military experts point out, the US Navy is already overwhelmed, and a prolonged conflict in the Middle East could force the US to pull back on its presence in Asia. This would leave the region vulnerable as China continues to assert its dominance in the South China Sea and around Taiwan. Reports suggest that Japan has already experienced delays in the delivery of key weapons like Tomahawk missiles. On the other day, some analysts argue that President Trump's military actions may be part of a broader strategy, which could be steadily aiming to weaken China's allies and reshape global power dynamics. By confronting Iran and Venezuela, Trump has reduced two of China's key sources of cheap oil, potentially disrupting China's economy. In some recent statements, US President Donald Trump has predicted that US military operations in the Middle East could last longer than the initially expected 4 to 5 weeks, if necessary. In addition, there are also reports that claim Tokyo has sought assurances from Washington that their military assets, which are crucial to deterring Chinese aggression, must not be shifted away from Asia. As the conflict with Iran intensifies, the Trump administration is taking decisive steps to address the depletion of US munitions stockpiles. Key executives from top US defense contractors are expecting to hold a meeting at the White House this coming Friday to discuss ramping up weapons production. The goal is simple. It is to replenish stocks that have been drawn down due to the ongoing military actions, not just in Iran, but also in Ukraine and Gaza. Companies such as Lockheed Martin and Raytheon, along with other major suppliers, have been invited to the meeting. The urgency is clear. The US military has been consuming a significant number of long-range missiles, artillery systems, and ammunition to sustain operations in multiple regions. The White House's efforts come as Deputy Defense Secretary Steve Feinberg is working on a supplementary budget request, which could be released as soon as Friday. This request is expected to be around $50 billion US, focused at replacing the weapons expended during recent conflicts. The funds will also support the rebuilding of the US military's capacity for future operations, as the situation in the Middle East still remains volatile. One of the main concerns highlighted in these discussions is the pace of production. Companies like Raytheon already have agreements in place to increase production, although it is also set to ramp up its production of Tomahawk missiles to 1,000 units annually by 2026. Sources say that it still faces notable challenges. In fact, pressure is mounting on US defense contractors to prioritize production over shareholder payouts. President Trump signed an executive order in January earlier this year to identify contractors who are underperforming their contracts while distributing profits to shareholders. A list of these underperforming contractors could be released soon, and companies mentioned in the list would be required to submit correction plans within 15 days of notice. If these plans are deemed insufficient, the Pentagon could take enforcement actions, including terminating contracts. Moreover, President Trump has also pointed out in a recent social media post that the US military, quote, has a virtually unlimited supply of munitions, but the reality is that it will take time to replenish the stockpiles effectively. Meanwhile, China has reiterated its stance on its relationship with the United States. A spokesperson for the National People's Congress, Lu Qingjian, has emphasized that both nations, as two major global powers, should respect each other and work towards peaceful coexistence. Let's first listen into his statements.
中方愿同美方一道， 加强各层级各渠道的沟通，为双方合作开辟更广阔的空间。同时，中方已有自己的原则和底线，将一如既往坚决捍卫自身主权、安全、发展利益。元首外交是中美关系发挥着不可替代的战略引领作用。去年以来，习近平主席同特朗普总统保持经常性沟通，为中美关系聚能稳健前行校准航向注入动力，两国关系保持总体稳定向好，受到两国和国际社会普遍欢迎。
Liu Qingjian's remarks come just one day before the 14th National People's Congress begins its annual session, where the country's priorities and policies will be discussed. The spokesman has stressed that both China and the United States stand to benefit from cooperation rather than confrontation. Liu Qingjian has also pointed out that President Xi Jinping and President Donald Trump have maintained regular communication, which has contributed to the steady and positive trajectory of the bilateral relationship. However, he also made it clear that China would not compromise its sovereignty, security, or developmental interests. These principles and red lines, he said, remain non-negotiable. Yet we see China continuing to advocate for diplomacy and positive cooperation with the United States, even as both nations accept having definitive areas of disagreement, especially over issues like Taiwan and trade. Moreover, Presidents Trump and Xi are to meet in China later this month, with trade chiefs of both of the countries meeting a little before the Trump-Xi summit, reportedly in Paris. These talks would significantly affect how the tensions will be mitigated in the Asia-Pacific region and how the US will navigate its military challenges amid a flurry of conflicts. That's all that we have time for this episode of
Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you're watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the headlines of this hour. US President Donald Trump confirms that US forces are in a very strong position as Iran's leadership suffers rapid losses. Trump rates the US war effort in the ongoing Middle East conflict 15 out of 10, claiming Iran's key missile capabilities are being wiped out. US submarine strike hit an Iranian vessel off of Sri Lanka's southern coast, killing at least 80 people thousands of kilometers from the Gulf, as fighting paralyzed shipping through the Strait of Hormuz for a fifth day, choking off vital Middle East oil and gas flows. US Senate Republicans backed President Donald Trump's military campaign against Iran on Wednesday, voting to block a bipartisan resolution aiming to require congressional authorization. The Senate has voted 53 to 47 not to advance the resolution, largely along party lines. Turkey has said that NATO air defenses destroyed an Iranian ballistic missile headed into Turkish airspace on Wednesday, marking the first time the alliance member has been drawn into the Middle East conflict and raising the possibility of a major expansion involving its bloc allies. An independent United Nations probe investigation rights violations in Iran has condemned attacks by Israel and the United States, as well as Tehran's retaliatory strikes, saying they violated the UN Charter. It also expressed deep shock over the strike on a primary school in southern Iran on Saturday, where more than 160 children were killed. Nepal begins voting today in a general election that will choose a new parliament in the Himalayan nation, nearly 6 months after a wave of unprecedented youth-led protests and the deaths of 77 people that forced Nepal's then Prime Minister to quit. Investor anxiety has calmed after a news report that Iran had signaled openness to talks and a pledge by President Donald Trump to steady oil markets as U.S. stocks closed up on Wednesday. Investors flocked again to tech shares, lifting the Nasdaq by 1.29%. A big tech industry group consisting of major Anthropic backers Amazon and Nvidia on Wednesday have expressed concern over the Pentagon's decision to declare the artificial intelligence company a supply chain risk, as other investors race to contain fallout from the lab's fight with the U.S. Defense Department. Now for this hour, we start with Middle East. The Israeli military has identified a new round of missiles launched from Iran towards Israel on the sixth day of the escalating Middle East conflict. According to their military, Israel's defensive systems are currently engaged to intercept the threat as the war continues to rage. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that Ukraine's partners, including the United States, has sought Kyiv's help in defending against Iranian drones. Let's listen into what the Ukrainian president has shared.
Партнери звертаються до нас, до України, щоб ми допомогли із захистом від шахедів, з експертизою, з реальною роботою. Були запити щодо цього і від американської сторони. Зараз цими днями я говорив з лідерами Еміратів, Катару, Бахрейну, Йорданії, Кувейту. Будуть ще перемовини з іншими регіональними лідерами. Ми координуємося з нашими партнерами в Європі. Звісно, будь-яка наша допомога, тільки за умови, що це не зменшить наш власний захист в Україні. І що це буде інвестицією в наші дипломатичні можливості. Ми допомагаємо в захисті від війни тим, хто допомагає нам, Україні, наближати достойне завершення війни. Я говорив сьогодні також з Рустемом Умєровим по його комунікації з американською стороною. Ми продовжуємо фактично в щоденному режимі спілкуватися з Америкою. Зараз через ситуацію навколо Ірану ще немає необхідних сигналів для тристоронньої зустрічі, але як тільки безпекова ситуація і загальний політичний контекст дозволять продовжити.
Meanwhile, portraits and memorial of Iran's late supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei have been seen in Tehran after he was killed by US-Israeli strike over the weekend. Now we welcome Mr. Sol Sadka. He's a political commentator, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Mr. Sadka, for joining us again. First of all, are you still going in and out of bunker? How's the situation like there? Are you staying safe? Please let us know.
Yes, thank you for asking. Everything is good here. We get most messages, alerts every few hours, and you have to go and take shelter behind as much concrete as you can find, usually in a bunker or in a stairwell, and then the alarm passes and everyone goes back to normal life. In fact, from about half an hour's time at 12 o'clock Israel time, the regulations about what is allowed to be open will be relaxed. In other words, the Israeli military has decided that the threat from Iran after 5 days since the beginning of the war has already abated enough that some semblance of normal life can be returned to. And my guess, those regulations will be increasingly released over the next few days. The pace of rockets falling has vastly reduced, probably as a result of the destruction of most of Iran's launcher capabilities, as well as much of their missile stocks on the ground, also accounting for the fact that they've used at least a third of their missile stocks already. So as regards Iran's capability to project power in that way and threaten people in Israel and around the region, remember Iran's missiles have the entire Middle East in range as well as the entirety of India. There's no one in India or even Bangladesh and Pakistan who are safe from Iranian missile attack. And that is being degraded at a very fast pace.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that and also raising the alarm about the situation. And Mr. Sadka, you know, as we see, you have mentioned that although the missiles towards Israel is decreasing, we know that Iran has hit many places in the GCC region, also in Israel, also in Kuwait, Iraq, and, you know, in and around the Middle East. So do you think that was this underestimation from Iran's side towards the capabilities of these regions, including of Israel? Or do you think it was vice versa? Do you think these countries Israel, US underestimated Iran's capabilities. What's your analysis?
I think the Western states and the Gulf nations had a very clear picture of what Iran was capable of. They understood exactly what they had and pretty much where they were keeping all the stuff. The IRGC was deeply infiltrated by foreign spies from many, many nations. The Iranians, however, due perhaps to their religious view on the world, which is not necessarily tied into reality, might have had a completely false picture of what their arsenal could inflict. Or it could also be that their arsenal of ballistic missiles was not really intended to carry explosives on the end of these rockets. These missiles are not sufficiently accurate. If you fire them at a point, only 50% of the time will the missile even land within half a kilometer of where you shoot it at. So when you have something like that, it's really only good as a terror weapon against a large mass of population. And even then, it has a limited effect against a place like Israel, where everyone has an alert and 10 minutes warning, and also usually a bunker under their building, which will keep them relatively safe. So despite firing off well over 350 missiles at Israel, they have only managed to kill, at last count, 12 Israelis. This is a catastrophe for them. It means their entire program as a strategic threat was worth nothing. A strategic threat means that they could attack Israeli military bases, critical infrastructure, power plants, desalination plants, to hit aircraft on the ground, and to hit them in timely fashion and precisely. They have none of that, none of it at all. So they didn't realize that. They were, however, building these missiles because at the same time they were building a nuclear program. And once the nuclear program was complete and they had the bombs, they really only had to figure out how to miniaturize those bombs, and they could put them on the end of the missiles. Now, when you have a nuclear explosion, it doesn't matter if you miss by half a kilometer. You'll still destroy everything. You'll destroy an airbase, you'll destroy even an aircraft carrier, and that's what they were going for. That's why they weren't particularly focused on the precision of their missiles. And it's why, because they didn't finish their nuclear program and now will never finish their nuclear program, their missiles really aren't that useful as a deterrent weapon. They're really just a nuisance. Of course, they do kill a few people. That's part of war, unfortunately and tragically, and it's very unfair. But that doesn't provide a strategic threat to a nation. It simply provides a minimal deterrence.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sadka, for sharing that insight with us. Please do stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion. Now we have a breaking news coming in from South Korea. South Korea has banned its citizens from traveling to Iran starting today due to the heightened safety risks caused by ongoing conflict. The South Korean Foreign Ministry has issued the travel advisory, urging citizens to avoid non-essential travel to Iran. This move reflects growing concerns over safety in the Middle East as tensions continue to rise. Now we move on to World Report from Italy. Italy will send air defense and to Gulf states facing Iranian strikes, Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has announced. Meloni has said Rome, like the UK, France, and Germany, intends to provide assistance, specifically in air defense capabilities. She has stressed the move is not just about supporting friendly nations, but also about protecting tens of thousands of Italians living in the region and around 2,000 Italian troops deployed there. The announcement signals Italy's growing role in regional security as tensions with Iran escalate. Now we have a breaking news coming in. The president of the semi-autonomous Kurdish region of Iraq, Nachirvan Barzani, has called for the Kurdish region to stay out of any conflict escalation that could threaten the lives and security of its region and the security of its citizens. He has stressed the importance of unity and cohesion among all political forces in Kurdistan to maintain the region's territorial integrity and constitutional achievements. Now we move on. A Russian drone has struck a Panama-flagged vessel, causing damage as it transported corn near the Ukrainian port of Chornomorsk in the Black Sea. The attack has occurred as the vessel named Bull was leaving the port. One crew member was injured, but the captain has refused evacuation and continued the ship's journey to Bosphorus Strait in Turkey. The attack is part of ongoing Russian efforts to target Ukraine's critical maritime export routes, which are vital for the country's maritime economy. Now we welcome back Mr. Sol Sadka. He's a political commentator, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Mr. Sadka, for staying with us. Now, looking at Russia, Ukraine, and Turkey's region, now as Russia-Ukraine war continues, do you think Turkey, as it's so connected to Black Sea, and also now Iran has intercepted a drone or missile from Iran as well? Do you think Erdogan would be able to manage protecting both sides of its, border from Iran and also from the Black Sea? How do you think he would manage now?
It's no trouble for Turkey at all to do that. They have a relatively powerful and competent military. They are part of NATO, and their opponents that you describe on both sides are not really necessarily their opponents. Turkey is trying to stay out of the Iran issue, if only for domestic consumption. They don't want to be seen as being a part of the American attack alongside the Israelis. But the Russian issue as well is not really an issue for them at all. The Russian Navy is effectively destroyed in the Black Sea. Part of it is destroyed, and what isn't destroyed is locked up in port. And whenever they try to leave port, they get sunk. So the Russian Navy in the Black Sea no longer poses any kind of threat to Turkey. They probably never did. They certainly can't. Russian military is absolutely tied up in the catastrophic war in eastern Ukraine, where they have managed to progress approximately 100 kilometers from their own borders in over 4 years now. So there's absolutely no prospect of them projecting power to the south towards Turkey, and even more obviously in Iran, that while the Russians started their 4-year war and have ended in complete catastrophe and stalemate, the Americans in the other direction have started their 5-day war so far and have already stripped Iran of the vast majority of its offensive capabilities. Its navy is all at the bottom of the sea. Its air force is all burned up on the tarmac. Its air defenses are no longer existent. And certainly within 2 or 3 days, as Hegseth was explaining, the Americans and the Israelis, and actually any other nation that feels like it, will have free reign over the skies of Iran. They won't even need to hide anymore. And at that point, Iran is no longer a strategic threat. They might be able to get off a missile here or there if they manage to sneak past and hide them in civilian trucks. But that will itself go down. They might be able to pose a terrorist threat in certain parts of the world, as we have seen in India and the UK and Australia, where IRGC-linked terrorists have all been caught. But again, that too will only harm them in the long run.
And Mr. Sadka, I wanted to move the focus to Ukraine. Ukrainian President Zelensky has said in his nightly address that, Russia should watch out of this situation about what happened to Ali Khamenei. He was specifically suggesting. And also, Ukraine has said that now a lot of countries in the Gulf is looking towards Ukraine to help them with buying Ukrainian latest drone technologies from them to help aid in this situation in the Middle East. So how do you think Ukraine would be I don't know what to say about, is it benefiting from this situation, or is it in loss from this situation?
This is fantastic for Ukraine. I would say not only is this fantastic for Ukraine, but the attack on Iran will end up being seen as the turning point in the Ukraine war. So the current situation in the world is that you have China and Russia and Iran, and they form a little triad of nations who have been mutually supporting each other For China, the benefit is they get the cheap oil from both of those two nations, and they supply some weapons, and they keep their economies alive collectively. Right at the hub and connecting Russia and China is Iran. And the idea was always to keep the USA pinned down in the Middle East with the threat of Iran, and thereby allow Russia to continue unabated their war against Eastern Europe, which wasn't going to end in Ukraine, by the way, although it has been ended in Ukraine, and to allow China to continue their preparations to reunite, as they put it, but really to capture Taiwan. And that, with the defeat of Iran, and Iran is defeated, even though it's not finished yet, but this is a done deal at this point, that means that Iran is now taken out of that alliance of China, Russia, and Iran, and they were the key node in that. They were the junior partner, but at the same time the key node. As a result, that alliance is over, and Russia and China now both separately and individually stand alone effectively. And Ukraine will be able to play that greatly to their advantage. And what we're seeing with Zelensky pointing out to the people of Europe and the people of the Middle East that they are now the battle-tested nation in Europe. They are the ones who know how to deal with the Russian aggression, because the Russians were allied with the Iranians, took their Shahed drone designs, and have been throwing them by the hundreds per day at Ukraine, the vast majority of which Ukraine manages to get rid of before they hit their targets. And everyone now needs Ukraine to help them with their Shahed drone problem. So this adds a great amount of utility to Ukraine as an ally. It ties them into the Western alliance. It ties them into alliance with Israel and the USA, and also with India going forward. And India will be the next issue here. India, no question, after seeing Iran fall in this humiliating and pathetic way, after all these years of trying to build up themselves as this great power, the bonds between Russia and China via Iran broken, India will, and we saw this already with Modi's visit to Israel. That was one giant big hug between Modi, Israel, and the USA. That was the plan here. And I'm no question at all that India will be shifting its allegiances westwards, away from Russia and away from China, and further into close proximity to the West. And we can see this is really, apart from anything, this is really the end of what people were trying to call the BRICS alliance. That's the end of that. That's not going to happen anymore.
With that, I would like to thank Mr. Sol Satka for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Asia, to Nepal. Nepal's interim Prime Minister Sushila Karki has casted her vote at a polling station in Kathmandu during national elections as voters across the Himalayan nation head to the polls. Gagan Thapa, the new head of the country's oldest party, Nepali Congress, casts his vote at a polling station in Kathmandu during national elections as voters across the Himalayan nation head to the polls. Let's listen into what Gagan Thapa has shared.
Nepal at this point of time needs very mature leadership, experience, as well as who has this appetite for change. So I'm here. So I have this appetite for change. I have a dream for change, but at the same time, I know our strength, and I also know the limitations of Nepal as a nation state. I understand the pain of the constitution making. So sometimes we tend to forget that. So we face different challenges. So I came through all this learning. At the same time, I believe that whatever a young Gen Z feels, that this has to be speed, this has to be delivery. I completely not only agree, I completely believe in that. So I think I'm...
Meanwhile, former Prime Minister of Nepal, KP Sharma Oli, has said that the election will put the constitution back on a democratic track. Let's listen in.
यसले लोकतान्त्रिक बाटोबाट संविधानलाई फेरि ट्र्याकमा ल्याएर देशलाई स्थिरता स्थायित्वका साथ सुशासन र विकासको बाटोमा अगाडि बढाउनु पर्छ। भरसक बहुमत ल्याउँछ एमालेले, प्रथम प्रजाति ल्याएन भने प्रमुख पार्टीको रूपमा आउँछ भनेर मैले पहिलेदेखि भनेको छु। जनतालाई दिग्भ्रमित पार्ने प्रयास र जनतालाई पलमा ल्याएर कुनै योगदान नभएका त्यस्ता खालका तत्त्वहरूले भ्रममा पालेर घृणा फैलाएर घृणाको राजनीति गरेर विश्वासको राजनीति गरेर यसरी देशलाई एउटा
However, the voters have casted ballots in Bhaktapur, a historic city near Nepal's capital, Kathmandu, as armed police stood guard at the temple-lined square amid a general election seen as a litmus test for the Himalayan nation's next phase of political stability. The election comes nearly 6 months after youth-led protests over corruption and limited freedoms led to violent clashes and the resignation of then Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli. Let's listen into some voters.
ये भोट से चाहिँ नयाँ सरकार बनेगा नयाँ सरकार से चाहिँ देशको विकास लगायत नीति निर्माण ऐन कानून बनाएगा देश र जनता के पक्ष में इसलिए भोट डाला
The kind of change we want in Nepal, especially we young generation, are very much sure. We are very much against corruption. We're very much for us, for the people, the working class. So yeah, that pretty much sums up.
Now we welcome Mr. Retired Rear Admiral Krish Kumar Garg. He's an international affairs analyst and defense expert. Joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Rear Admiral, for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, how significant is the situation for Nepal, and what are you eyeing?
I think this situation and these elections are very, very significant for Nepal, especially in the light of the protests that happened last year. And if we see the history of Nepal's elections since 2008, when Nepal became a republic, it's not been a very happy situation. You know, governments falling, prime minister changing frequently. So it's not been a very stable government, and that has been one of the causes of the protests that happened last year. So I think a very stable majority government this time will be the key to Nepal's future. And I'm sure Nepal as well as India is waiting with bated breath to see whether Nepal will get a full majority government or it will be a coalition, and instability as has been since 2008 that we have seen.
And you know, how vital is it for the upcoming, whoever wins this election, the government, to balance out their international relations with India and China?
I think it will be one of the toughest tasks of whoever leads the next government, because India has historically had very strong ties with Nepal. We have strong cultural ties. And for many years now, China has also been trying to develop a foothold, a stronger foothold into Nepal. And at times it leads to conflict of interests of Nepal with China and India. So I think a very, very delicate balancing act will have to be done by the Nepal government, whosoever comes into the power next in these elections. And in my view, I think in the previous government, there were certain pitfalls with respect to India. They probably, in my assessment, leaned more towards China, and India was not very happy about it. So I think some course correction will need to be done by the new government, and certainly India and China both will be watching the developments very, very eagerly and very, very closely.
With that, I'd like to thank Mr. Rear Admiral Garg for joining us today and sharing that insight with us on NewsX World. Now we move on to Indonesia. Indonesia's Communications Ministry has issued a stern warning to Meta platforms for failing to curb the spread of online gambling, disinformation, and hate speech across its platforms. The warning followed an unscheduled visit by Minister Mutia Hafid to Meta's office in Jakarta. Meta's compliance with Indonesian regulations was found to be low, with only 28.47% of flagged content addressed. The ministry has urged Meta to strengthen its content moderation efforts and accelerate the removal of harmful material. Indonesia previously summoned social media platforms to address the growing concerns over disinformation. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.
The physics was known for quite a while, and so that I think it hasn't really changed our understanding the quantum world work.
The job with the James Webb Space Telescope was to look as far back in time as we could to see the universe as it was young.
Changing the basic attitude about what education is for and what it needs to be.
Biology, medical studies, they make great progress.
Hello and welcome, I'm Suma Katauka and you're watching the World Report on News X World. Let's take a look at some of the headlines of this hour. US President Donald Trump confirms that US forces are in a very strong position as Iran's leadership suffers rapid losses. Trump rates the US war effort in the ongoing Middle East conflict 15 out of 10, claiming Iran's key missile capabilities are being wiped out. US submarine strike hit an Iranian vessel off of Sri Lanka's southern coast, killing at least 80 people thousands of kilometers from the Gulf, as fighting paralyzed shipping through the Strait of Hormuz for a fifth day, choking off vital Middle East oil and gas flows. US Senate Republicans have backed President Donald Trump's military campaign against Iran on Wednesday, voting to block a bipartisan resolution aiming to require congressional authorization. The Senate voted 53 to 47 not to advance the resolution, largely along party lines. Turkey has said that NATO air defense has destroyed an Iranian ballistic missile headed to Turkish airspace on Wednesday, marking the first time the alliance member has been drawn into the Middle East conflict and raising the possibility of a major expansion involving its bloc allies. An independent United Nations probe investigations rights violation in Iran has condemned attacks by Israel and the United States, as well as Tehran's retaliatory strikes, saying they violated the UN Charter. It also expressed deep shock over the strike on a primary school in southern Iran on Saturday, where more than 160 children were killed. Nepal begins voting today in a general election that will choose a new parliament in the Himalayan nation, nearly 6 months after a wave of unprecedented youth-led protests and the deaths of 77 people that forced Nepal's then Prime Minister to quit. Investors' anxiety calmed after a news report that Iran had signaled openness to talks and a pledge by President Donald Trump to steady oil markets. As U.S. stocks closed up on Wednesday, investors have flocked again to tech shares, lifting the Nasdaq by 1.29%. A big tech industry group consisting of major Anthropic backers, Amazon and Nvidia, on Wednesday expressed concerns over the Pentagon's decision to declare the artificial intelligence company a supply chain risk, as other investors race to contain fallout from the lab's fight with the U.S. Defense Department. Now for this hour, we start with Middle East. The Israeli Defense Ministry has released a statement stating that U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth reassured Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz during an overnight call, telling him to keep going until the end and affirming that the United States was with them. Meanwhile, Katz has thanked Hegseth for extensive U.S. assistance in defending Israeli citizens against the Iranian missile threat. This affirmation comes amid the ongoing military operations in the region. The statement underscores the continued strong support between the two nations, particularly in defense matters. The close communication signals the U.S.'s commitment to backing Israel through its military endeavors. Now for this discussion, we welcome retired Major General Gigi Dwivedi. He's a war veteran and professor of international relations and strategic studies, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at Israel and US's coordination, some of our guests have respectfully stated that they don't agree that they are as cooperative or are in exactly same page right now towards this ongoing war. What's your take? Do you think they're completely aligned?
Thank you, Suma. Always a pleasure to be on the show.
Same.
Well, this operation has been undertaken jointly by America and Israel, and they had codenamed the operation as Rising Lion and the Epic Fury. So there was total sync in the war objectives and also in the planning and execution, which we have seen for last 6 days. So therefore, I don't think that there is any difference among the two countries as far as the strategic objectives are concerned. And they are very, very clearly defined. First is to defang the Iranian forces. I mean, this degrade and destroy capacity as far as the missile and the nuclear capability is concerned. Also destroy his navy, weaken the Iranian capability to wage proxy wars in the region, and of course they also decapitate the leadership of Iran. So all these objectives are, I think, jointly evolved, and they are being executed jointly so far. Of course, there could be some difference in their execution or in the operation matters. Well, that is always there, because after all, everything doesn't go as per the plans, and the certain issues would always come up which can be ironed out. And you saw there was a conversation between Defense Secretary Hegseth and also the Defense Minister of Israel, Katz, and they have agreed to carry on, and both have assured each other the support. And I'm sure such dialogue also would be taking place between the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, and also the President of America, President Trump. So therefore, I don't think that there is a major difference between the two. However, there could be certain issues on which the both may have their own perspective, and but these are all ironed out at the joint planning at the joint conferences. So I don't think that there is a major difference between the two, because the war as it's going on, definitely it's going on very much in the favor of Americans and Israelis, and quite rightly they have been able to achieve part of the objectives, and until the objectives are achieved, they have to carry on, because after all the wars are fought for certain political and military objectives, and they are taken to finality once those objectives are achieved, so that the negotiation process can start again. Asuma.
And building on that, how do you think how are Arab countries eyeing this cooperation between US and Israel? Because also according to some reports in media, they say that Arab countries are upset with the alignment because US is sending all the advanced weapons in defense of Israel, and not those countries which are also now being attacked because of holding US's base.
That's true. If you see how the Iranian missiles have been hitting targets, as far as Israel is concerned, you see Israel has its own very formidable defense, as against the hostile warheads or hostile projectiles, because after all, Israel have been fighting the war for last over 75 years, Asuma, and they have built up their own systems. That is, the Iron Dome is there, David Sling is there, the Arrow missile cover is there. So obviously they are very well prepared. But as far as the Gulf countries are concerned, well, they have been totally dependent on Americans, and as it appears to be that Americans have primarily focused on defending their own military assets in these countries, and they are not actually gone in for the larger air defense of the whole region at large. That's why a number of missiles have hit the non-military targets like hotels, airport, and other commercial centers. So to that extent, I think their fears or their anxiety or their concern are well founded, because it doesn't appear that Americans have devoted enough to the overall air defense of the countries, but confining themselves largely to their bases, and that's why number of missiles have been able to hit the targets in the Gulf countries, primarily the commercial target, but they have not been able to cause any major damage as far as the military bases or military installations are concerned. Suma.
Thank you very much, Major General, for sharing that insight. Please do stay with us as we come back to you. Now, the Israeli military has reportedly launched a large-scale wave of airstrikes targeting key infrastructure across the Iranian capital of Tehran. This action is part of Israel's ongoing military operations against what it calls the Iranian terror regime. Moreover, in response to the escalating tensions in the Middle East, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has confirmed in Parliament that Australia's military assets have been deployed to the region. While he did not provide specific details, the move signals Australia's active engagement on the ongoing crisis. Let's now listen into his statement.
The government is deploying 6 crisis response teams to the region, and we've already deployed military assets as part of our contingency planning earlier this week. I thank those Australians who are going into a dangerous situation in order to help their fellow Australians caught up in this conflict.
In a related development, the Canadian government is also working to assist nationals caught in the Middle East. According to Canada's Foreign Minister Anita Anand, at least 2,035 Canadians have requested help to leave the region. The government is offering chartered flights, commercial bookings, and ground transport where possible. Canada's Foreign Minister says that 74 Canadians have asked for evacuation in Iran alone, while additional consular staff have been deployed to neighboring countries to assist with border crossings. Anand has further stated that the UAE has seen 1,171 requests, while Qatar has reported 237. There are also requests from Canadians in Lebanon and Israel. Let's now listen in to what she has shared.
Of the 106,000 Canadians in the region, 2,035 have contacted Global Affairs Canada for assistance with egress. I want to speak directly now to Canadians in the Middle East and Gulf region. Your government is with you. We are working hard for you, and we are arranging options for you to leave the region. Our government has developed options for Canadians seeking to leave the region. These options are threefold. 1, a limited number of chartered flights. 2, block booking of seats on commercial flights. 3, ground transportation services, certain cases where it is safe.
Now we welcome back Major General, retired Major General Gigi Dwivedi. Thank you very much, Major General, for staying with us. Now looking at this, Australia is being involved by giving more support. Is this part of AUKUS, or why is it doing this now?
Suma, Australia
Yes.
and the Americans, they are the allies. In fact, also New Zealand, because they have a defense pact. And America has about 2,500 troops based in Australia. So this is quite expected that the allies will always come together during the time of crisis. And that's what has been stated by the Australian Prime Minister Albanese, that they have deployed their assets in support of America going on war with Iran. And their assets are being operationally deployed. And so therefore, this doesn't come as a surprise, because it's in keeping with the Defence Treaty and Defence Pact, and it's quite expected that Australian would have joined in. Not only Australian, even other allies like UK, France, Germany, they have committed their support, though largely to the defensive operation. Even Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, has said that options of participating in such operation which are going on is well on the cards, while as of now they have not really committed, but that option still remains. So the point I'm trying to make is that alliances defense partnerships are built for such contingencies, and Australia joining the war and actively participating is quite in keeping with the traditional partnership and defense alliances, and this has not come as an unexpected development. It was anticipated, and more would join in time to come, because after all, these partnership and alliances are tested during such circumstances, and they only validate the credibility of such alliances when they are actually executed on the ground in an event of eventuality, which is right now on. That is the war between America and Israel joint against the Iran. So therefore, I think this is very much expected on the cards, and it should not have come as a surprise. Asuma.
Thank you very much. With that, I would like to thank Major General Gigi Widiwedi for always joining us and sharing that insight with us. Thank you. Now we move on to Lebanon and Israel. Israel has launched fresh strikes on Beirut and southern Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah positions in response to escalating violence. The strikes hit several Hezbollah command centers in Beirut's southern suburbs, with no immediate casualties reported. Israel's military has also targeted an apartment in the Bedawi refugee camp, killing senior Hamas official Wassim Atallah al-Ali. Meanwhile, Hezbollah vowed to intensify its attacks on Israel, claiming multiple strikes as far as Tel Aviv. The conflict, which erupted after the killing of Iran's leader, has led to at least 72 deaths and 83,000 displaced people in Lebanon. Now we welcome Mr. Andrew K.P. Long. He's an independent China strategist, joins us live from Hong Kong. Thank you very much, Mr. Long, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at Israel and Lebanon, how do you analyze current capacity of Hezbollah? Do you think that they are willing to, no, not they are willing to, but do you think they are going to be incapacitated because of this operation or final push by Israel attacking them?
Well, Iran has two very powerful proxies which support the cause of Iran and its national sovereignty. Don't forget that before the Lebanon was invaded by Israel and degraded its infrastructure and the Hezbollah regime, but without completely eliminating the Hezbollah movement. So Hezbollah remains an Iranian proxy, which would be activated and energized because of this invasion against the entire Iran. The other one proxy is the Houthis, who have a very disruptive capabilities over the port of the Strait of Hormuz, and so it would threaten the kind of enemy adversary ships or shipping across the Strait of Hormuz, across the Red Sea. So I think that this is part of Iran's retaliatory strategy, mobilizing its proxies, the Hezbollah and the Houthis, but also hitting out left, right, and center against the entire region. Not that they want to make an enemy of countries like Saudi Arabia or the UAE. After all, only relatively recently, there was a historic rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia, brokered by China. But however, when these very important interests are at stake, the Saudi Arabia obviously is not on all fours with Iran, but Iran's position, the strategy is to diffuse the war around the region, not to make an enemy of the region, but unfortunately that's collateral damage. But what's the objective? The objective is to cause so much pain to the region, to the rest of the world, so that there is a backlash against continuing this invasion by the United States and Israel. I think that that's a strategy. And then also they want to wear out the American military because various sources reported that the Americans and the Israelis are fast running out of their expensive weapons, their expensive defense missiles, because a great deal of them have already been expended over the war in Ukraine, and it's not producing them fast enough. But all these realities are hidden by a very gung-ho narrative trumpeted by President Trump. But underneath it all, the Iranians, even though the economy is weakened, even though they have lost the airspace, continue to have massive a number of missiles and drones, which they want to deploy to continue to destabilize the region and mobilizing its proxies like the Houthis and also the Hezbollah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Long, for sharing that insight. Please do stay with us as we come back to you. Now moving on to Asia, Chinese Air Force activity around Taiwan has fallen sharply in recent weeks, with no flights at all in the past week, a sudden drop in what had been daily military maneuvers that could signal Beijing is recalibrating its pressure on Taipei. According to Taiwan government's data, China has dispatched 460 military planes, from fighter jets to drones, into Taiwan's air defense identification zone so far this year, a 46.5% drop compared with a year ago. In February, Taiwan has detected 190 such Chinese aircraft, the lowest monthly tally since its defense ministry began publishing detailed daily figures in 2022 on what Taipei sees as an ongoing pressure campaign by Beijing, which has been honing its ability to attack the island, including with war games. According to experts, Chinese President Xi Jinping may be toning down visible pressure tactics to create a better atmosphere ahead of his anticipated meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump at the end of the month. Now we welcome back Mr. Andrew K.P. Long. He's an independent China strategist. Joins us live from Hong Kong. Thank you very much, Mr. Long, for staying with us. Now, you know, the sudden drop in these maneuvers around Taiwan, do you think it is because of U.S. President and Xi Jinping's meeting, or do you think there could be other reasons for this?
Well, the deterrence of the Chinese military over the Taiwan Strait is part of the three-pronged strategy to push Taiwan towards peaceful unification. The three strategies are firstly, military coercion through these flights and also deployment of naval vessels along Taiwan Strait, demonstrating China's military resolve against any unilateral declaration of independence. The second strand of this three-point strategy is diplomatic and economic isolation. More and more countries are now giving up the recognition of Taiwan, even though the original number recognizing Taiwan as a country has dwindled to just a small handful. The third pronged strategy is increasing people-to-people exchanges. The two countries, the two places across the Taiwan Strait belong to the same people, the same civilization, the same language. And Taiwan have been part of China for millennia, dating back to the Ming Dynasty and beyond. So I think that through these peaceful exchanges, and there are lots of Taiwanese businesses already operating on the mainland, and people-to-people visits on both sides, and academic exchanges as well. So this three-pronged strategy would sustain the momentum, pushing Taiwan towards a negotiation table on a peaceful unification package, which are likely to be even more generous than for Hong Kong and Macau. The latest Trump stance on Taiwan also helps because President Trump has been ambivalent towards whether it's going to put boots on the ground in a direct confrontation with China when push comes to shove. And all these dynamics add together would achieve Beijing's preferred aim of peaceful unification. President Xi did mention 2027, but that was only the 100th anniversary of the founding of the PLA. That year also marked the milestone where President Xi wanted the PLA to be almost invincible in exerting its deterrence over the Taiwan Strait. It's not, not a date for military action. And peaceful unification along the street trends would remain the priority. But the scaling down this kind of flights also, of course, sends a positive signal ahead of the expected visit. Even though such a visit is now facing headwinds with what is Trump doing on Iran, trampling on the world order,
Yes.
especially raising a lot of concerns around the world, and
Yes.
it could be problematic for President Xi to host President Trump in the circumstances. However, the meeting had been agreed and also a welcome a stage of the confrontational relationship to at least pause,
Yes.
so that both sides can find ways to construct a more constructive relationship.
Thank you as always, Mr. Long, for highlighting that insight with us on News6 World. Now we move on to U.S. U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has faced intense questioning during a House Judiciary Committee hearing over her comments labeling 2 Americans killed by federal immigration officers as domestic terrorists. Noem has made these remarks shortly after the January shootings came under scrutiny. She did not retract or apologize, citing ongoing FBI investigations and the dangerous circumstances faced by federal agents. The hearing also featured debates over immigration enforcement, the use of force by officers, and Noem's claims about deportation priorities. Let's listen in.
Based on what you know today, Madam Secretary, were Renee Good and Alex Preddy domestic terrorists?
Congressman, what happened in Minnesota in those 2 incidents was an absolute tragedy.
Were
And I
they
offer
domestic
my
terrorists, as you said to the
offer
country?
My condolences to their families, because I know that their lives will never be the same after that happened.
Is that an apology
And I
for what
would-
you said?
We, in those incidents, offer as much information as we can from officers and agents on the ground in a chaotic scene that gets
I'll repeat
relayed
my question,
to
reclaiming
us
my
so that
time.
we can
Based on what you know today, Madam Secretary, based on what you know today, were Renee Good and Alex Preddy domestic terrorists?
As you know, there's ongoing investigations that are being led by the FBI.
Oh, but you didn't wait for the investigation, did you? You didn't wait for the evidence. You proclaimed that they were domestic terrorists at the time. Why did you do that?
And you didn't wait to attack our law enforcement.
Why did you do
officers
that?
are going into a dangerous situation.
Why did you call them
One thing I
domestic
would say
terrorists?
is our ICE officers and our HSI officers that day risked their lives to protect that scene. So evidence could be reclaimed, so it could be used.
Now we move on to Asia. China's 14th National People's Congress has opened its 4th session in Beijing with around 3,000 deputies gathering to review the government's work report. The session marks a critical moment as the country sets its development path for the next 5 years. Premier Li Qiang has outlined an economic growth target of 4.5 to 5% for 2026, emphasizing stability and high-quality development. Key policies focus on expanding domestic demand, stabilizing employment, and fostering technological innovation. As China faces global uncertainties, it remains committed to opening up and enhancing international cooperation. Let's have a look.
China has its economic growth target for this year at 4.5 to 5%. Placing economic stability and high-quality development at the center of its policy agenda. The target was announced as Chinese Premier Li Qiang delivered the government work report at the opening meeting of the National People's Congress on Thursday morning in Beijing. The report outlines a more proactive macro policy stance with measures aimed at expanding domestic demand, stabilizing employment, and reinforcing market confidence.
The main targets for development this year are as follows: GDP growth of 4.5 to 5%, while striving for better in practice. Surveyed urban unemployment rate of around 5.5%, with over 12 million new urban jobs.
Beyond the growth target, the report places strong emphasis on accelerating technological innovation and industrial upgrading. It calls for fostering new quality productive forces. These would rely on concrete measures to build a modernized industrial system with advanced manufacturing as the backbone and accelerate high-level self-reliance in science and technology.
We will launch industrial innovation projects, encourage central government enterprises and other SOEs to take the lead in making application scenarios more accessible, and foster emerging pillar industries such as integrated circuits,